and she needs to go and see her.
All right.
That's all right. Keep your seat, please. Thank you very much.
Sun News. Can't take any photographs, just from the right. Take any videos. WPMF, you got yours? And WP to E?
Discuss the press and see what yes. I need your help.
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good morning, Jay.
How are you? I'm not. I'm not a problem.
I'm not sure.
Sure. You're welcome. They
I'm not doing them in Georgetown anymore. Because I got 2 nights going home in Orange County right now. I still got a handful, so I'm still down there occasionally. Nobody right now. Austin's going to take several hours, and Ricky's going to take several hours. They're gonna, and I'll work through it. Definitely, I told her to take the FP2 up and down and try one of
Judge, may we have sure. Good morning. Hey, Mark, how you doing? Now, it's supposed to be Mike's lawyer's table is not forbidden, so if you have them, you need to remove them, please. The rule doesn't allow you to do that. Well, I mean,
Whoever, one of y'all.
But the rule doesn't allow the mics to be at the table, as I understand it, unless they can show me a modification. Yeah, I don't have a problem with them being, I don't have a problem with it being somewhere in here that you can't be at the table, that's not a problem. Probably the easiest thing to do would be where the witness saying this will be, of course.
Okay.
How sensitive are your mics? Will they pick up the arguments fairly easily?
From
Anywhere?
yeah, I mean they should be okay if they're up here.
Okay, that's fine.
But where would you like me to put it here?
That's, I just want whatever can't be here, it can't be at the lawyer's table.
Okay.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's a small room, and
There's actually a
be fair to the mic,
screen
but the rules don't allow
that
it.
picks up, so if you want to put it in this area.
Okay, well we have two, so we can just do it this way. If that works.
No, that's all right. Don't worry about it.
Hey, you want me to name the numbers and everything?
Yes, please. Okay. How are you?
How are you?
Good.
Good morning, Judge.
How are you?
Good.
Good.
You go to the fair?
No, we had prom this weekend.
That's right. I remember. I saw a bunch of that crowd out this weekend.
Yeah. I'm glad it's over with.
Dresses have changed a lot since I was at prom. Didn't
Yes.
you couldn't wear stuff like that at my prom. You couldn't show a midriff. You
Uh-huh.
could not do that at my school.
No, mine was covered up. She was all covered up.
But have you noticed it? I mean, I was always kind of chunky, so I wasn't worried about wearing it anyway.
I can't see you chunky
I
now.
was in high school some tough years.
Lord have mercy, it costs so stinking much. You know, dress, shoes, earrings, hair, makeup.
Yeah. That's it. Thank you.
This year. I don't think it's. A little early, but there's everyone here that needs to be, as far as you know.
Everybody for defense.
Very well, that's fine. The more is present, the more is
I
listening.
think we're waiting for a few more people.
Okay, that'll be fine, no problem.
Thank you.
May we approach her?
Sure.
This is our instruction. We made
Thank you.
motion to join the agenda.
This is a form. Deal with these until it's not so we clear. Okay.
No, do not. I can't find another one. I've tried to get some extras and I can't find any more. I just need to order it. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't. Sure, okay, thank you.
While we're waiting, let me remind the media, been advised that the bench conferences are being picked up by the live feed. Let me read the rule. The rule says there shall be no audio pickup or broadcast of conferences which occur in a court facility between attorneys and their clients, between co-counsel of a client, between adverse counsel, or between counsel and presiding judge. So whatever you need to do to mute that, when we have that, we need to do that, please. We won't comply with the rule, but I'm delighted to have you, but I was not aware of that. But that tells me that the mic system is good here, so that's good. Thank you. Thank you.
Your Honor, everybody is here from our side, if y'all are ready.
Okay, all right. As I understand, the motion hearing today is a motion to suppress the testimony of the expert witness, but there had been a motion filed to join in this by Mr. McCullum. Mr. McCullum, I'll be happy to hear from you, and then, Ms. Lysell, I'll let you respond.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Very briefly, Greg McCollum on behalf of Tammy Moore. Earlier in the case, there were some developments and some events, and then it brought us here today where the state had elected to go forward in terms of this case and motions on two particular indictments for the co-defendant, Sidney Moorer. As a result of that, Mr. Truslow filed certain motions, the primary motion being the one to limit or suppress any evidence regarding the videotape techniques that were used to try to identify the Moore's truck. We were not a part of that motion. However, given the character of the evidence in the case and the similarities in the case and what we think are the same issues for the basis of proper defense, the judicial economy, the defense resources and the state resources for that matter, we filed basically a very simple motion asking to be joined into this motion. And Your Honor, it's not so much for us to be heard extensively on it, it's simply to bring us into the motion so that any orders that may be issued as a result of this hearing today, we just ask that they would also apply to the defendant, Tammy Moore.
You have to hear from us.
Yes, sir, Your Honor. Just a moment of clarification before I reply. So Mr. McCullum is not asking to join into the trial. Am I correct on that?
Well, he said he doesn't know how much he's going to participate. Let's just assume for the sake of discussion he's going to participate. I don't know to what extent he's going to participate. Obviously, he's not going to be able, it's not going to be repetitious because we obviously have time constraints for everybody. But just for the sake of discussion, we just assume that he's going to be involved. The whole purpose of, I think, his motion is to say that this ruling will apply in this case, whether it be to Mr. Moore or Ms. Moore. The witness, I assume, as we've had a bench conference, the testimony, this testimony would apply to both defendants, I would think. I mean, it doesn't apply any more strongly to Mr. Moore than Ms. Moore or vice versa, I wouldn't think. But I don't know anything more than what's been shared with me, and I thank you for the report and giving us a chance to review it before today.
Okay, so the motion we received from him is no longer the motion. It is just that he wants to be
No,
going
the
in.
motion that you received is for him to join in this proceeding. And I'll be delighted to hear from you as to how that's prejudicial to the state.
Your Honor, we don't have a problem for him joining in on this particular motion. We understand his concerns. Our only objection was it looked like he filed that he wanted to join in on motion to suppress statements attributed to Heather Elvis, motion to quash indictment, motion to sever charges for trial, motion in limine, and any response to state's motions.
Yeah, well, those may be all that he wants to do. Today, we're going to hear one motion. We're going to hear the motion to suppress. The other motions will be scheduled at another time. I don't be happy to, I'm assuming, only because of my practice as a lawyer and what I've dealt with for 22 years, your witness is not here for free. And he doesn't need to be sitting here while we hear all these other motions. Those are motions that can be scheduled for another time. And I think it'd be really easier to deal with from the standpoint of going forward as well.
Yes, sir. And our only concern was we didn't have an issue with this motion. We just didn't want, we're preparing for trial, and then we get a joinder motion to join both defendants.
We're going to have a joined motion, but it's not going to be today. So you'll have a chance to fully prepare for it. Okay? Thank you. All right, so you're in for the purpose of the motion to suppress or modify or limit the testimony of the expert.
As to that issue, not for the trial in chief.
At this point, well, what I'm going to rule on is his testimony at the trial in chief.
I understand.
I
think that the state interpreted my motion to say that I was trying to join the cases at trial as opposed to participate in this motion.
At this juncture, I don't know that we've addressed that as to whether it'll be.
And I haven't moved for that.
I understand, so that's fine.
Well, thank you.
All right, that we clarify how we're proceeding today now.
We're ready to begin, Your Honor, whenever the court is.
I'm prepared. You may call your witness. The whole purpose is to hear this expert witness.
My understanding was I assumed that Mr. Tressler would put his motion on the record first and we would go from there.
Well, he's filed it. I mean, it's a part of the record. It's a motion to suppress. The purpose of this is, as I see it, now maybe y'all tell me, I'll be delighted to defer to you. I've done them since Watson. I think I've had about 4 or 5 in civil proceedings. I haven't had any in criminal proceedings yet. But typically this raises the reliability of the expert testimony. Since Watson and his progeny, we're required to determine several things. As you know, it's very well defined. There are 3 issues I have to deal with. So that's the purpose of this hearing today, to hear the testimony to make that determination.
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
Okay?
At this time, we're going to call Grant Fredericks to the stand.
Okay?
Please raise your right hand. Place your left hand on the Bible. You solemnly swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give the court in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. You state your full name and spell your last name.
My name is Grant Fredericks. It's spelled G-R-A-N-T. Last name is F-R-E-D-E-R-I-C-K-S.
And Mr. Fredericks, if you don't mind, start off by telling this court a little bit about your background.
I'm a forensic video analyst. I've been involved in this business for about 32 years. I am a former police officer with the Vancouver Police Department in Canada, where I was the head of the forensic video unit attached to the Criminal Investigation Division. Since about 1994, I have been an active trainer and lead instructor for the Law Enforcement and Emergency Services Video Association, which is an organization that trains both public and private video analysts from around the world. I've actively been involved in teaching law enforcement and private analysts throughout the United States, Canada, the UK, Asia, and in other countries. I am a contract instructor at the FBI National Academy in Quantico, Virginia. I've been teaching in Quantico since about 1998 and have been teaching all of the National Academy sessions since 2002, teaching forensic video. And I am a certified forensic video analyst and a member of the International Association for Identification and the Law Enforcement and Emergency Services Video Association. And I'm an actively am an expert in testified since about 1994 regularly, and in the past 10 to 12 years over 150 times in courts in the United States, Canada, the UK, New Zealand, Cayman Islands.
And Mr. Fredericks, what I've got up on the screen, have you seen all the PowerPoints in this slide?
I have.
And have you seen, are all the information that's going to go up here, is that the information off your resume?
Yes.
Okay, or that it's been included in your report, which has already been turned over?
Yes.
Okay. And these bullet points up here as to your background, is all that information correct?
Yes.
And is all that information on your CV that's already been handed over?
Yes.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit specifically about teaching and the teaching that you have done in forensic video analysis?
The Law Enforcement and Emergency Services Video Association is the preeminent organization throughout the world that provides training for forensic video analysts. It specializes exclusively in that area. I have personally instructed between 2,000 and 3,000 video analysts in the course of that instruction. The program provides 4 primary courses that are required courses for certification. The courses are basically level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. I have taught all of those courses over the years. The course that I teach currently is the level 3 photographic video comparison course, which deals with the identification of objects such as clothing and vehicles. Part of that course looks at the science of reverse projection photogrammetry. Photogrammetry is a very large umbrella expertise. Reverse projection photogrammetry is exclusive to imaging and comparison, and it's what video analysts look at.
Now, the classes that you teach at the FBI, does that include reverse projection and photo video comparison?
The course that I teach at the FBI is the FBI National Academy is set up to bring law enforcement agencies in North America to a Western industrialized standard for science in investigation. The State Department also sponsors foreign police agencies that are allied countries where they send their senior executives for that purpose. So the National Academy covers many different areas. I'm in the forensic science area, and so I introduce the executives to the updated sciences, which includes reverse projection and photographic video comparison.
Okay. Now, before you started teaching and before you got into forensic video analysis, where did you take classes in forensic video analysis to learn this science?
My degree, undergraduate degree, is in broadcast television with an emphasis on television engineering to start with. I've taken classes at University of Oklahoma, North Carolina State University, and at various conferences and training areas throughout my career.
Did you take any classes from the FBI or agents of the FBI?
Yes, the FBI participates in training in a number of areas, including in with the Law Enforcement and Emergency Services Video Association, and I've taken a photographic video comparison, or pardon me, a reverse projection photogrammetry class from members of the FBI's Forensic Audio Video Image Analysis Unit, which is the unit that does reverse projection photogrammetry and photographic video comparison.
Okay. And just so this court is clear, when you're mentioning photographic video comparison and reverse projection, are those the methods and techniques you used in this particular case?
Yes.
Okay. So you have taken classes just as to that technique from the FBI, and you have also taught classes in that same technique and method?
Yes.
Now, before we get too far on this slide, have you testified as an expert before on forensic video analysis?
Yes.
Okay, and if you don't mind looking at this slide, do you mind talking to the court about your experience as an expert witness in forensic video analysis?
Yes, I testify in courts, both as an expert for the prosecution and for the defense, roughly half and half.
Okay.
I also testify in civil cases for complainants and defendants. And I have testified primarily in the past 10 years, mostly in the United States. But overall in my career, throughout Canada, the U.S., I've testified on reverse projection in the United Kingdom and on reverse projection photogrammetry in New Zealand and on reverse projection photogrammetry and forensic photographic video comparison a number of times in the Cayman Islands.
Okay. Now, the hearing we're here today for, are you familiar with this type of hearing?
Yes.
Okay. And is that what you're referring to when you're talking about a Fry and Dauber challenge?
Yes.
Okay. And after those challenges, were you qualified as an expert?
Yes.
And after those challenges and those hearings, was your testimony deemed to be admissible?
Yes.
Okay. And was that in every challenge that you've gone through so far?
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about a little bit about your leadership in the science of forensic video analysis. If you don't mind, tell the court a little bit about that.
I have been an active member of the LEVA Certification Development Committee from about 2005 until about 2012. I was the team leader of LEVA's certification committee from 2007 until 2009. I continue to be involved in the curriculum development committee, but not as a member of the actual committee because I'm only teaching one class. I've published in various industry publications that are read by my peers, and I have co-authored best practices and standards and guidelines for the use of compression in digital video environments, primarily mobile environments. That publication was a standard for the International Association of Chiefs of Police, and it was sponsored by the Department of Justice. I've also participated in co-authoring best practices and standards for the Law Enforcement and Emergency Services Video Association for its members. And I have been invited to contribute and have contributed to the guidelines and best standards by the Scientific Working Group on Digital Evidence in the photogrammetric session. The Video Standards Committee for the ICP is a committee that looks at both mobile video encoding, so for compression of digital video for police vehicles and for body-worn video systems. And this month I was asked by the ICP to publish an article on the costs of owning a digital video system, including the cost of managing the compression, which I've authored. That will be coming out next month.
Now, Mr. Fredericks, before we go too much further, these publications, were they peer-reviewed?
The ones that co-authored the best practices were, yes.
And how about the articles that you've written, were they peer-reviewed?
No.
And if you don't mind, tell this court why not.
These are articles that are published in peer magazines, and they're read widely, and I'm frequently asked to contribute again.
Okay. So you've written articles in fields that were well established. There was no novelty to them.
Right. The peer review area for peer reviewing publications generally is for new and novel kinds of work where they can be reviewed by your peers. to determine the veracity in testing. I stay pretty much strictly with techniques and methodologies that are well established and well known in my community.
Okay.
So they don't generally require peer review.
And were all of those articles published in the area of forensic video analysis?
All of them were, yes. Or the technology that supports that, yes.
Okay. And if you don't mind, are you certified in the field of forensic video analysis?
Yes.
And if you don't mind, tell this court a little bit about that certification and what you had to do to get that certification.
The certification as a forensic video analyst requires about 188 hours of specific coursework. It then requires additional education in related areas. There is a requirement for recertification every 3 years, which requires a certain number of credits. The final part of the certification process is where an analyst has to submit a case report, has to defend that case report in front of a committee of his peers, and it has to contain enough analysis processes, primarily photographic video comparison or reverse projection content that meets the standard for certification.
And can I get these marked as the state's exhibit, please? This as well. Sorry. Sorry. Thank you. Mr. Fredericks, if you don't mind, tell the court what I'm showing you that's been marked States Exhibit 1 through 4.
Exhibit 1 is a list of the current individuals who are certified by LEVA as forensic video analysts.
Okay, and is your name on that list?
Yes.
Okay, and is your certification up to date?
Yes.
Okay, and if you don't mind, what is States Exhibit number 2?
Exhibit number 2 is an overview of the requirements for certification by LEVA.
Okay, and that entails all what you have to do in order to gain that certification.
Yes.
Okay, and about how many pages of requirements are there to gain that certification?
5.
Okay, and do you recognize what's been marked as States Exhibit number 3?
Yes.
Okay, and if you don't mind, tell this court what that is.
This is a list of the certified members who are certified forensic video examiners by the International Association for Identification.
Okay, so there is actually 2 types of certifications you can get.
There are 2 organizations that provide certification in the same area.
Okay, and what is the what is the other organization that will also give you a certification?
The International Association for Identification.
Okay, and are there names on that list as well of people that are certified by the IAI?
Yes.
Okay, and if you don't mind, tell this judge what State's Exhibit number 4 is.
Exhibit number 4 is the overview of the requirements for certification by the International Association for Identification.
Okay, so IAI also has a list of things you have to complete before being able to take a test to get certified.
Correct.
Okay, and how long have you been certified by LEVA?
About 8 years, I think.
Okay.
Perhaps longer.
Now, tell me a little bit about people that can get certified by either LEVA or the IAI.
There's no restriction for certification except that one has to have a certain amount of experience and has to attain a certain number of credit hours in appropriate training. In LEVA's position, all of the training courses are all tested. So there is proficiency testing, there's written testing, there's oral testing, and then eventually there is the boarding by your peers. The International Association for Identification doesn't have a specific training program. It recognizes all of the LEVA classes that they will apply credit from, but there are a number of vendor classes that these are companies that provide specific vendor training that the International Association for Identification also recognizes, and LEVA doesn't recognize that quantity of hours. There is a test to be taken by the applicants to the International Association for Identification. But overall, one can be either a police officer or a civilian employee of a police agency or government agency, or one can be working in private practice. There's no restrictions.
Okay. And are there multiple names on both lists?
Yes.
Okay. So, by no stretch of the means, are you the only person that is certified in the field of forensic video analysis?
No.
Okay. And there's multiple people that are actually certified in this field of science?
Correct, from state, local, and federal agencies in the United States and from the rest of the world.
Okay. Now, is there an actual listserv of peers that you can talk with that is a part of this community of forensic video analysis?
Yes.
And how long has that existed?
That listserv started in 1998.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It started in 1998.
Okay, and is it all about forensic video analysis?
It's exclusively forensic video analysis, yes.
I'm showing you now what's been marked as State's Exhibit Number 5. What is that?
This is a list of active members. And it's a partial list. It's most of it. Active members of the Forensic Video Analysis listserv.
Okay, so these are all members and peers that are in the field of forensic video analysis.
Yes.
And this has existed since 1998.
Yes.
Now, if you don't mind, tell us, forensic video analysis is a broad umbrella. Tell us a little bit about the subdisciplines and specifically the disciplines that you used in this case.
Forensic video analysis has a number of subdisciplines, like all sciences. Photographic video comparison is a significant part of what we do, and there's a dedicated training specifically to that subdiscipline. Reverse projection photogrammetry is also a subdiscipline where there's a significant amount of training available. And that training primarily comes from members of the FBI to our community. Macro block analysis, speed estimation, color correction, those are all subdisciplines. In this particular case, photographic video comparison, reverse projection photogrammetry, and speed estimation are some of the methodologies that I employed in this case.
And if you don't mind, Mr. Fredericks, I'm going to kind of narrow it down to just the methods and techniques used in this case to ask you about. If you don't mind, tell this court how long you've been using those methods and techniques.
I started doing reverse projection in 1984. Photographic video comparison and reverse projection often go hand in hand. Photographic video comparison is probably the most common area where I testify. In many of those cases, reverse projection is employed.
So how many years have you been using comparison and reverse projection?
Reverse projection for over 30 years.
Okay.
Photographic video comparison as a primary area of my work Since about 1997, 98.
Okay. And have you testified as an expert in those particular areas?
Yes.
Under the broad area of forensic video analysis?
Yes.
Have you been qualified by courts as an expert in those areas?
Yes.
Okay. And have courts accepted your testimony in those areas?
Yes.
Has any court in the United States ever not qualified you as an expert in those areas?
No.
Okay. Has any court ever held that it was inadmissible or unreliable and you were not allowed to testify in the United States?
No.
Okay. So every time it has generally been accepted that you were a expert and you were allowed to testify?
Yes.
And that was on the same techniques and methods used in this case?
Yes.
Okay. And you've been using those techniques and methods for years?
Yes.
Okay. Just as to those techniques and methods, how long have you been an instructor in those methods and techniques?
Started teaching those methods in Canada in about 1997.
Okay. And has your testimony ever been limited when you testified about those techniques?
No.
Okay. Now, just a couple more questions. Have you worked in South Carolina before on a case as a forensic video analysis?
Yes.
And when was the last time you worked on a case here in South Carolina?
Just a couple of months ago.
Okay. And do you remember what kind of case that was?
Yes, it was a homicide case.
Okay. And do you remember the defense attorney that hired you?
Done a lot of cases since then. I do remember him.
Who was on the other side?
It was, you'll have to help me. Morgan Martin was the defense attorney for that case.
And who was the prosecutor?
I think you were the prosecutor.
I was.
It was an odd
It was.
situation, but everything was fully disclosed to both sides before I agreed to do the work.
So just a few months ago, you worked here in South Carolina for Morgan Martin on a homicide case in the field of forensic video analysis.
I did, yes.
Okay. Are you currently working on a case in South Carolina other than this case for forensic video analysis?
I am.
Okay. And if you don't mind, are you working with anybody else? And I'm not going to ask you any details about the case. Are you working with anybody else as far as another expert or somebody else that attorney has hired?
Yes.
And who are you working with?
I'm working with an expert who is the audio expert in the course.
Okay.
We're on the same team. I'm doing the forensic video, and he's doing the forensic audio.
Okay, so y'all are on the same team, hired by the same attorney,
Correct.
and you're doing the video,
Yes.
and he's doing the audio.
Yes.
And that's here in South Carolina.
Yes.
Okay, and if you don't mind, tell this court who's doing the audio on that case.
Mr. Bruce Koenig is sitting here.
Okay. Your Honor, as to part one of this hearing, I'm going to ask at this time that Mr. Fredericks be recognized as an expert in the field of forensic video analysis.
Ready to examine, Mr.
Yes,
Clark.
sir, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Mr. Fredericks, good morning. I'm Kurt Trussell. I represent Sidney Moorer.
Morning, sir.
I want to make sure that we're on the same page. You are talking about reverse projection, correct?
In part,
That's
yes.
what you did here, right?
In part.
Okay. Let me back up. Your education, a bachelor's degree in communications,
Correct.
and so you were, following college with that bachelor's degree, you were a television reporter
And producer, yes.
and producer. In fact, you won quite a number of awards. You listed all your awards in your curriculum vitae, correct?
Correct.
You won an award for Best Television Program, Best Television Reenactment, correct?
Correct.
Best Public Television Commercial, correct?
Yes.
Best Television Reenactment, right?
Yes.
Best Investigative Story of the Year, right?
Yes.
Broadcasters Public Service Award,
Yes.
Excellence in TV Broadcasting,
Yes.
and another Excellence in TV Broadcasting.
Yes.
All right. Have you ever won any awards within the scientific community?
Yes.
And why are they not on here?
May I see that?
Yes. And you have certificates of recognition if that's what you're talking about.
The last award that I won was in 2012, 2013, I believe. It was the Vollmer Award. It's the international award for the International Association for Identification, which recognized the work that I did with a large investigation regarding a large riot. We had about 5,000 hours of video. I managed 52 forensic video analysts who came in from all over the world to assist an agency with that investigation. And as a result of that, we won the Vollmer Award for excellence in forensic techniques. And that should be on there, but it was on the slide that we discussed. It was at the bottom of one of the slides.
All right.
And it's spelled Vollmer.
Thank you. Now, in terms of your education, did you ever obtain a master's degree in anything?
No.
Okay. Based on your bachelor's degree in television broadcast, do you consider yourself to be a scientist by education?
I consider myself to be a scientist by practice and by subsequent education, yes.
But you have no degree in science, any science, nor engineering?
That is correct.
Okay. I want to go back to when you talked about teaching some stuff at the FBI Academy.
Yes.
Now, what you're talking about is where state and local officers are permitted to come in, or people from other countries come in and take courses on certain things, correct?
Primarily, that's correct today, yes.
So are you training FBI agents?
No, well, yes. Not at the FBI. They come to the, well, pardon me.
At the FBI Academy?
Yeah, there's a difference between FBI agents and FBI examiners, civilian examiners versus the agent. Agents are generally in charge of a group of civilian examiners. The civilian examiners take the classes that I teach through the Law Enforcement and Emergency Services Video Association and the classes that I teach privately.
But not at the Academy?
At the Academy, it's the National Academy, so it's the people I talked about who come in from other agencies. The
state and local police.
Right. The agents don't participate in the National Academy, nor do the civilian examiners from the FBI.
So you do not teach anybody from the FBI labs, any agents?
Well, the agents aren't examiners.
So I'm just asking if you teach them or train them in anything.
There are no agents who are examiners in my field.
I'm just asking if you teach any FBI agents. It's yes or no.
The FBI agents don't do the work. They have FBI examiners, civilians, and I teach them, yes.
So are there no FBI agents that work in the FBI laboratory?
No. In the FBI Forensic Audio Video Image Analysis Unit, the primary examiners are civilians.
What about the other ones that are agents? You teach them?
They would be more the management. No, they wouldn't come to my courses.
Okay.
They don't do very much.
You mentioned working a minute ago with Bruce Koenig. Do you know him?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the position he held at the FBI?
Yes.
What was that position?
He was the unit chief of the audio unit.
Okay. And he was the director of that lab?
He was the unit chief of that lab.
You know how long he was with the FBI?
He was with the FBI, I believe, from the mid-'70s to the mid-'90s.
Okay. Now, when you talk about the area of reverse projection, am I correct in assuming that reverse projection is a method by which to obtain materials with which you can then look at and work with? Is that fairly accurate statement?
It's very broad.
It's a way to gather together the best information you can.
Well, it's a very broad description of some of the things that reverse projection does, yes.
What is it? You tell me, please, the purpose of reverse projection, what you use it for.
Reverse projection is the process of overlaying contemporary images of a scene with historic images of a scene in order to make observations.
If you let me stop you there real quick, because that's what I want.
Can you just complete
I'm sorry,
the
y'all.
answer?
Go ahead.
I'll allow you to finish his answer, please. You may continue.
To make appropriate observations or to obtain measurements. So there's two different purposes of reverse projection.
Right, but is it true that the purpose of reverse projection is to gather the information you need to make observations or other issues?
Yes.
Okay, so the reverse projection, you undertake to do that to then obtain materials that you can then observe and identify and examine, correct?
That's fair, yes.
So after you do the reverse projection work, you then take what you learn from that and then you do something else with it, correct?
Possibly.
Okay. So, do you understand, or have you gathered today that what in your report you talk about, what I'm specifically talking about and interested in is headlight spread pattern analysis?
Your Honor, have we moved on from the questions on his qualifications?
I'm allowed, and if you need to follow up, you may do so, Ms. Larson.
Reverse projection is different than headlight spread pattern analysis, correct?
No, it's exactly the same. It's headlight spread pattern analysis is just the examination of the reflection of light off of the object. In this case, we're just looking at one feature of reverse projection. So the vehicle reflects light back into the camera. The forward-facing illumination of the light pattern from the headlights, fog lamps, whatever it is, reflect light to the camera. That's just one feature. We would also, if I were examining dents, then I would describe a dent comparison. If I were examining mud spatter, I would, on the side of the vehicle, I would describe mud spatter. This is all part of reverse projection, photographic video comparison. In this case, there was an illumination of light in front of the car that could be contrasted and compared. So I described that as headlight spread pattern analysis, compartmentalizing all of the features of reverse projection and photographic video comparison.
Okay, well, I'm going to try to simplify this. In order to do a headlight spread pattern analysis, you would generally first do a reverse projection, correct?
Correct.
Because then you have photographs or whatever comes from the reverse projection to take over here and do a headlight spread pattern analysis, correct?
That's one way to do it, yes.
Okay. So there are two different things, right? You came down in January, you did a reverse projection, correct?
Correct.
Then you took what you gathered.
Now getting into an area that will be better served later, because in order to answer your questions, I've got to find that he's qualified to render an opinion about the questions you're answering. So, asking. So,
Do you consider yourself to be an expert in headlight spread pattern analysis?
I consider myself to be an expert in the examination comparison of how light reflects off of a roadway.
Okay.
And yes.
Do you consider headlight spread pattern analysis to be a science?
Not on it's part of photographic video comparison or reverse projection, just like it's a sub-discipline of that examination. So people in my field, including the FBI, consider the headlight spread pattern when doing photographic video comparisons for the identification of a vehicle.
Okay. Now, when Ms. Livesay put up the sub-disciplines of forensic video analysis, did you notice that headlight spread pattern analysis was not a sub-discipline under that category?
Correct, because it wouldn't be appropriately listed there. It's part of reverse projection photographic video comparison. It's just part of the image of the vehicle that we examine and compare. We look at the ensemble of features from a vehicle. That's just one of them that we look at. It's something that can't be ignored. We can compare it, we can contrast it. In some areas, we can quantify it sometimes.
But, I'm almost done, Your Honor.
That's fine, take your time.
I want to make sure that I heard you right. You would agree with me, the area of headlight spread pattern analysis, you would not quantify or you would not classify as a science in and of itself. In terms of what makes a science, methodologies, peer review.
I'd like to be careful. It absolutely is part of the peer review process of photographic video comparison, which is obtained partly through reverse projection. The headlight spread pattern is a critical feature of a vehicle that can be compared and contrasted for the purpose of either eliminating the vehicle, if for instance, the headlight on the vehicle, which may be made by a different manufacturer, will cast a beam completely inconsistent with the headlight of the known vehicle, in which case the known vehicle can be eliminated. There are thousands of different types of headlights, and they
articles that you can point to in any scientific journal about headlight spread pattern analysis?
Yes, a large number. I've provided a number of articles from the National Highway Transportation Safety Authority, or administration, pardon me, that has published significant number of articles on the differences in headlights for safety purposes. They have looked at the frustration of lack of standards in the automobile industry, which accounts for the huge variance in headlight spread pattern. They're trying to minimize oncoming glare for oncoming vehicles, and they're struck by so many, a large variety of manufacturers of headlight components, lack of standards on how those components are fit into a vehicle, the analog process, which means the human process of placing the components, the headlight components into a vehicle is done by hand, it's not done by a machine, and they're literally screwed down and approximated. There are other industries. The headlight industry itself looks at the problems with maintaining the life of a bulb and how different bulbs diminish within a headlight, how oxidation on the lens contributes to the change of a pattern, how G-forces, when a car hits a speed bump, how the pattern changes significantly. So there's a large number of publications that recognize the problems with the changing headlight spread pattern from vehicle to vehicle, make to make, and model to model.
Okay. Were any of those publications based upon scientific research?
Governor, just briefly, have we moved on from if he's qualified?
I'm allowing his testimony. It's fine. Okay. I'll stop him when I think he's good, just as I did earlier. Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Have any of the publications been based upon scientific research?
Yes.
Which ones?
The Highway Transportation Safety Authority Administration, they've got a couple of publications that are published in peer-reviewed magazines. There's a company in Colorado, I believe, called Kineticorp that published in a peer-reviewed magazine, and they specifically are in the traffic accident reconstruction field, and they discussed changes in headlight spread pattern and the measurement of that change.
And the one in the articles we just talked about, is your testimony they have been peer reviewed?
Yes, it's my understanding they've been peer reviewed.
Can you point to any peer
Trustler,
reviewed?
now you are
All right.
specifically in the claim. Just for the sake of Mr. Trustler, I assure you, I've Googled it, and there are tons of articles about headlight spread patterns, and I'm sure you have too. So let's move on to something specific dealing with the qualifications to render opinion.
Now, the South Carolina case that you were involved in, the murder case, did that involve headlight spread pattern analysis?
No.
The one that you're currently working on in South Carolina with Bruce, does that involve headlight spread pattern analysis?
No, it involves reverse projection photogrammetry, though.
Okay. But it doesn't involve the headlight spread pattern analysis and the premise that all headlights are unique in that way?
That doesn't relate to the identification of the vehicle in that case, so no, it wouldn't.
Okay. How many cases have you testified in regards to headlight spread pattern analysis and it being unique to each vehicle in the world?
Testified, I believe, provided expert evidence in the comparison of the headlight spread pattern at least a half a dozen times.
And in those cases, did you render opinion that it was consistent with a make and model, or did you say it was the known vehicle?
Both.
Okay.
Depending on how much information I had, but yes, in some cases I've said it's consistent, vehicle can't be eliminated. In other cases where I have enough information holistically about the case and about the headlight spread pattern, I've formed an opinion about the identification of the vehicle.
I have one last question. Let me see. I remember I didn't write it down, but I remember it. You mentioned that some of these organizations, and I think you mentioned NHTSA, or one of these places that did some research, that the main concern that they had were the lack of standards with headlight spread pattern analysis, and what to do about, maybe cleaning that up or getting to a better place in that science, if it is a science. Are you aware of standards that they have now put out and put together? Is there something you point to in terms of standards or procedures?
Again, that's a question that you will have to wait until I'm qualified.
I'm done, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any additional questions, Mr. Tully?
May I have just a minute, Your Honor?
Sure.
The defense would request that you permit me to call my expert prior to.
I appreciate this. Dealing experts aren't foreign. We all know that. The initial question that I have to decide is basically twofold. Number one, is the topic something that is beyond ordinary knowledge? Obviously it is. Number two, has Mr. Frederick demonstrated a knowledge of training, background, and experience sufficient to render an opinion? He certainly has done that, so he can render an opinion. Now, the extent, the breadth of that opinion, that's what the second part of this is all about, and the primary part of this. But certainly Mr. Frederick is certainly very qualified. He's answered your questions and the solicitor's questions. and has demonstrated that knowledge. So he will
Thank you, Your Honor.
he will be permitted to render opinions.
Mr. Fredericks, we're going to go a little bit now into the science of what you did in this case, which was reverse projection and photographic video comparison. If you don't mind, first of all, tell this court, have you seen the videos involved in this case from Highway 814 and a DNS site work video?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you don't mind, did you watch those videos?
Yes.
Okay. When you watch those videos, could you determine any information without doing the science?
Not reliably, no.
Okay. Were you able, after doing the science, to determine the class and characteristics of this drug?
Yes.
Okay. Could you determine that prior to doing the science?
No.
Okay. So even you, as an expert watching the video, could not tell the class or characteristics of that drug?
No.
Okay. Once you did reverse projection, video comparison, you were able to determine the make, the model, and the characteristics of the truck. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So what you're telling this court is even you, more or less a juror, could not gain that information from simply watching the video.
I spent considerable time at the beginning when I was first provided the videos, examining all the videos, and I would not have had any opinion regarding the identification of the make or model of the vehicle. That would require the reverse projection methodology to get there.
And if you don't mind, tell this court a little bit about the tools that you use for the examination of the video in this case.
I went back to the scene. I employed images from the original camera, recorded through the original digital video recording system, under the same lighting conditions, the same environmental conditions, and then I used a forensic tool that's commonly used in my field to overlay the images to compare and contrast the light. I also conducted a number of tests on reflective areas of the vehicle by covering over those areas and uncovering them so I could properly identify where reflection was coming from. I removed, for instance, a toolbox in the vehicle, placed the toolbox, removed the toolbox, studied the reflection differences. I also used over a dozen other vehicles of different makes and models but similar in appearance, and vehicles of the same class, both in manufacture and make, and to compare the reflections. So there was a lot of tools. And
Okay. If you don't mind, tell this court, because you watched the video, correct? You've done the science. Would your testimony as to the class and characteristics of that truck assist the jury?
yes, it's my experience it would.
And would they have any way of knowing the class and characteristics of that truck
I've already ruled that it's not a matter of common knowledge. It would require testimony, which would be beneficial. But please feel free to answer, but I've already decided that.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is going to be the last question.
Okay.
So you would agree that your testimony would assist the jury?
Yes.
Okay, but for your testimony, they would have no way of knowing the class and characteristics of that truck?
I don't think it would be possible for a layperson to view the video. It wouldn't be possible for an experienced forensic video analyst without having done the tests to come to that conclusion either.
Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about the testing. Tell this court, if you don't mind, we understand that you use reverse projection and photographic video comparison. If you don't mind, tell this court a little bit about what you did. What exactly is that science that led you to determine the class and characteristics of the truck?
The process is to calibrate the historic camera perspective with a contemporary perspective. In other words, recreating the view. That has to be done under similar lighting conditions, under similar environmental conditions. So in other words, if the road was wet, go back when the road is wet. If the road is dry, go back when it's dry. Environmental conditions such as fog would cause issues as well. The compression, which is the process by which the system records and stores the data, it's important to replicate that because compression can also change the shape of objects. Consideration has to be very carefully given when examining the images to a number of features primarily regarding compression, false edge pattern that may be produced by the compression, color changes, lighting changes that are a factor of the compression and the lack of light. The process then is to very carefully place the vehicle into a known position. That's the position of the historic vehicle for the purpose of doing reverse projection. That generally might inch backwards and inch forward until the overlay is as close as it could possibly get, where then reliable observations about reflection can be made, including the reflection of a pattern of the headlight, reflection off of a bumper, reflection off of the tail lights, reflection off of street lights on different features of the vehicle. So that's part of the process of reverse projection. The photographic video comparison is now comparing and contrasting the results of the reverse projection.
And if you don't mind, tell this court, when you are making this comparison, is it imperative that you try to use the same area, the same camera, the same time of night? So if it's dark during the original video, when you do this comparison, you do it when it's dark. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And if you don't mind, tell this court, did you use the same camera for your comparison video that was used for the original video?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And did you do it at night during the same hours that the original video was taken?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And did you use it in the exact same area?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So you used the same camera at the same type of night to run through the same area of Highway 814 and past DNS site works?
Yes.
Okay. So it is fair to say that you replicated it to as close to identical to the original situation for the comparison?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you don't mind, when we're talking about the comparison, tell this court a little bit about how that works, how many trucks you ran through to eliminate trucks, and about that science.
The process of photographic video comparison and reverse projection for the purpose of comparing and contrasting vehicles generally is that we compare what we refer to as a known vehicle, the vehicle that the police would have in their custody. They want to compare and contrast that to the question vehicle, the vehicle during the incident. Generally, I ask for two vehicles of the same class, make, model, year, and color to do the comparisons. In this particular case, because of the nature of some of the images, I asked for about a dozen vehicles of different makes and models that yet appeared very, very similar. And I requested a number of vehicles of the same class, same make, model, and years with a variation in order to compare and contrast them to see what differences, visual differences, were apparent in not just vehicles of different classes that looked like they were the same shape, but also vehicles that were identical in make, model, and year to test the observations of headlight spread pattern, because that was one of the features that we looked at. So in this particular case, I think in this case I've probably tested more vehicles for the purpose of comparison than in any other case I've done, just because of the number of king cab type trucks in this area. The other part of this, though, is to do a statistical examination of how many vehicles go by that area over a long period of time. That was critical to the examination. And then to know through another investigation how many vehicles of this class are actually in this county. That's all part of the process of doing this examination.
Okay. So if you don't mind, let me go back just to make sure that everybody is clear. In this particular case, you ran through using the same camera, same type of night, 12 trucks.
I believe it was 12 or more trucks, yes.
Okay. And some of them were, the known truck was a Ford Limited. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And you ran through a Dodge. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And a Chevrolet.
Yes.
Okay. And if you don't mind, tell this court, is the purpose of that to eliminate that as being a possible match to that truck?
Well, the purpose is to compare and contrast. Generally, we start off with, can we eliminate? And we do that with the known and with all the vehicles. Can we eliminate these vehicles? And I have, in another case, I was presented by the investigators with a vehicle they believed to be the vehicle in the crime, and I eliminated it. It was very, very close, but I was able to forensically eliminate the vehicle. It's not what they wanted, but that's what it was, and it was correct. In this case, the purpose is to determine and demonstrate that vehicles of different classes will have differences, and they can be eliminated. So we looked at the Durangos and the GMCs and the Dodges that were very, very similar to distance, yet there were differences. So in all those cases, those classes of vehicles could be eliminated. They were not the questioned vehicle or not consistent.
Okay. So when you're doing the comparison, you are running through these trucks and you are comparing absolutely every aspect that you can. Is that correct?
Every visual aspect that can be compared was compared, yes.
Okay, so you are looking for if it's dark in color or light in color from the reflection of the light. Is that correct?
If the color can be determined, we would look at that. If the luminance, which is the brightness level, even though you can't see color, sometimes you can see brightness reflection, which would indicate certain colors, eliminate certain colors. So that's something that would be considered. Obviously, the reflection of the light is significant because of the different kinds of bulbs used. Some are much, much brighter, some are designed to look very different.
Okay, and if you don't mind, tell this court, did you use photographic video comparison and reverse projection to determine if this was a dark in color truck or a light in color truck? Did you use that method and technique?
Yes, that was one of the efforts.
Okay. And using that method and technique, were you able to determine the color of the truck as to whether or not it was dark in color?
Yes, I was able to determine the vehicle was dark in color.
Okay. Now, if you don't mind, tell this court, did you use reverse projection and photographic video comparison to tell whether or not this was a four-door truck or a two-door truck?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so that was also one of the comparisons you made.
Yes.
And were you able to determine whether or not this was a four-door or two-door truck?
It's a four-door truck.
Okay. Now, using video and reverse projection and photographic video comparison, were you able to tell whether or not this was a truck that had a tool bed?
Yes.
Okay. So that is also one of the things you were looking for in this characteristics.
Correct.
Okay. And you used the same method and technique with the color, whether it was four-door and whether or not it had a toolbox. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, did you also use the same method and technique to determine whether or not this truck had a HID headlight or a regular headlight?
Yes, it did.
Okay. And were you able to tell by photographic and video comparison and reverse projection if it had an HID headlight?
Yes, it did.
Okay. Now, did you use these same techniques and methods to examine the spread pattern from the HID headlight?
Yes.
Okay. And were you able to compare the headlight spread pattern using this technique and method?
Yes.
Okay. So you used the same technique and method to compare the headlight as you did to whether or not this was a four-door truck and whether or not the truck had a toolbox?
Yes.
Okay. So you used the same signs for absolutely every class and characteristic on that truck?
Yes.
Okay. Now, could you take one part of that characteristic out and have the same opinion, or is it the totality of all the information that led to your opinion?
It's the totality,
Okay.
including the extra information and studies that were done.
Okay. So you didn't use any different science when you looked at the headlight that you used when you were determining whether or not this was a four-door truck?
No.
Okay. And if you don't mind, through the science, were you able to determine the class and characteristics of this truck that was on the video?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you do a report?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you don't mind, in that report, did you include the comparisons, the pictures of the comparisons?
Yes.
Okay. So when I look at the report, or the court looks at the report, or anybody looks at the report, you have done a picture showing this is the comparison, so people can see it for themselves?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you don't mind, tell this court a little bit about, is this a technique that could be replicated by another scientist?
Yes.
Okay, so if somebody wanted to come in and question what you did, they could come in and do it themselves. The technique is the same whether you do it or Bob Smith does it. Is that correct?
Yes, they could take all the images that I provided, or they could go back and do it themselves.
Okay, so this is a science that can be repeated?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you don't mind, tell this court a little bit about, is there a method, basically, or a process to control the quality of what you did in this particular case?
Yes. We employ a methodology referred to as ACE-VR. It's a methodology that is universally employed by fingerprint analysis, footwear analysts, DNA, every identification-based science. It stands for analyze, compare, evaluate, and verify. Forensic video science adds the R, which is for report, because our work, because it's so visual, and there's we apply a report to it for the purpose of peer review primarily. So there might be one other identification science that applies the R, but we refer to it as ACE-VR. The others refer to it as ACE-V, but that's been a standard for decades.
Okay, so there is a quality control or standard in place to ensure the reliability of what you did in this case.
That's correct, and the verification part is that testing part.
I need her, if she could please clarify the question. What he did, is she talking about the reverse projection or the headlight?
I'll allow you to cross-examine him. The questions he's answered, I understand the question. You can follow up on that.
Thank you, Judge. And so you have testified, just so I'm clear, that there is a quality control procedure and standard in place for what you did in this case?
Yes.
Okay. And what you did in this case was the same for every aspect of the truck?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you don't mind, is this something only you do, or are there other agencies like the FBI that do the exact same thing?
The FBI and other agencies do the exact same thing.
Okay. So what you did in this case, they've done with vehicles as well?
Yes.
Okay. And you've done it with vehicles as well?
Yes.
Okay. And other people in this community of forensic video analysis has also done the same science and method and technique?
Yes.
Using comparisons just like we did to figure out the class and characteristics of the truck?
Precisely, as we did.
Right down to the headlight?
Yes.
Okay.
So you can stick it.
Okay. Mr. Fredericks, I'm showing you now what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 6. If you don't mind, first of all, tell the court what you're looking at.
This is a publication by the International Association for Identification, which represents about 5,000 forensic experts around the world. And this is a glossary of forensic terms used for I'll just read the name of it.
Okay.
It's Forensic Imaging and Multimedia Glossary, covering computer evidence recovery, forensic audio, forensic photography, and forensic video. And the subheading is a joint project of the International Association for Identification and the Law Enforcement and Emergency Services Video Association.
Okay. And just so the court knows, those two organizations are the two that give certifications in this field, the IAI and LIBA.
Correct.
Okay. And is that a published document that anybody can look at or see?
Correct. And
And if you don't mind, about how many people are involved with the forensic video analysis aspect of the IAI and LIBA?
I know that LIBA has about 600 to 800 active members. I don't know the number of the IAI,
Okay.
but it's probably close to the same amount.
And if you don't mind, those two organizations certify people and are an active participant in the video forensic analysis field. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And these are terms that they recognize. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. If you don't mind, tell this court whether or not they recognize the terms that we have talked today about regarding reverse projection, comparison, and the comparison of headlights.
Yes, they're all defined within this document.
Okay. So every one of those aspects that we have talked about are defined in the glossary of this publication that was published by the IAI and LIBA.
Correct.
Which are two organizations that certify people in video comparison.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I have a question here, and we'll give this to this lady. I have a question. Headlight pattern analysis. Okay. Have you heard Mr. Truslow refer to that earlier today?
Yes.
Okay. Tell this court, I think there needs to be some clarification. Is that a separate analysis, or is that just the same analysis that you did on every other aspect of the trial?
It's just one component of reverse projection and photographic video comparison. For instance, we don't refer to vehicle bumper analysis as a science, but if we can, we examine the bumper, we examine the features of the bumper. We don't refer to mud spatter analysis as a science, but we compare the mud spatter because that's a transient, unique feature that will be gone in the next rainstorm. But if you can seize a vehicle with mud spatter and compare it, it's something that can be observed. We don't compare, we don't use the term bumper sticker analysis as a science, but we measure the angle that a bumper sticker might be on a vehicle. We measure the distance between bumper stickers. We measure the shape of a bumper sticker, but it's not a science. It's just part of, it's not a unique science itself that you can point to publications, but it is part of the forensic video comparison and reverse projection.
Okay, so this is, when we're talking about the headlight comparison, we're not talking about some separate analysis. We're talking about the same analysis that you did on every other aspect of the trial.
That's correct. It's just
so
part of the examination of the reflection caused by the object.
Okay, so that is a part of the fact that it's a four-door, black or dark in color, HID light, tool bed on the back. This is just one more characteristic.
It's part of the ensemble of observations.
Okay, so the same science is used for every single piece of that truck.
Correct.
Okay, so this is not some separate test and separate tools or methods or technique that you use.
No, it's not.
Okay. If you don't mind, I want to go over, I'm sorry, how long has the FBI been using these same methods and techniques in determining class and characteristics of vehicles?
A lot longer than I have. I'm aware of publications that go back to the beginning of my career from the FBI doing photographic video comparisons.
Okay. Now, this comparison of the headlights, is that something the FBI does and other agencies?
Yes.
Okay. So this is not something novel that's been done for the first time?
No.
Okay. If you don't mind, I want to go through some factors with you real quick.
Let's take a break at this point. Take about a 10, 15-minute break would be at ease.
Okay.
Thank you. And you may step down if you need to.
Thank you.
Hold on, Mr. Fredericks, just so you hear this in front of you, you can talk to me.
Yep.
Okay.
No conversation with any of yours. Thank you, sir.
May I see those exhibits?
Yes.
Thank